And Dexter, come on up here. I'd like to show a little diversity in your chief of staff. Come on up and balance this thing. I'm trying all these. I don't been around all these knucklehead men everywhere. I'm trying. I learned that from Rev.
Yeah,
Some diversity
really?
up here.
Oh, okay.
Dexter, have your chief of staff come on up here. Mercer. Come on, Senator Mercy, come on up here. And when all the women sticking on one end, balance this out. And Melton, get right here.
Yeah, she wants y'all to. We'll balance it out.
Yeah. Hey, yo, you first. We got enough room. Out of what was the famous Sakowitz department store in Houston with its rich history in Houston. They'll get to look at that, and then if they download that app behind the wall, they'll know why that mural is there, and it makes such a profound statement that we should not ban books. Today we give voice to the countless authors whose books have been deemed too controversial, so they were banned. Banning books is an affront to democracy, where we should be a nation of ideas. Banned Books Week allows us to celebrate the books we love and fight back against state and local government extremists' coordinated campaign to erase essential chapters of our history and roll back the rights and freedoms that many have fought and died for generations. Those forces are also altering school curriculums to minimize the brutal truths of slavery and the fights against racial injustice and police brutality, from the harrowing periods of enslavement to today's struggles. The playbook is not new and includes the following: banning books that discuss race, gender, equity, and inclusion, purging textbooks and the history of civil rights, slavery, and other freedom struggles, banning diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at public universities. Director Melton, I want to recognize you and thank you again. He's the head of the Harris County Public Library who joined us today. He did a great job, and I think other libraries across the state of Texas and around the country should also join us in protecting and promoting libraries as centers of learning, diversity, equity, and inclusion. A war on truth rages across the nation, especially in Texas. And our public schools and libraries are the front lines. Across the country, 4,349 book bans in 23 states were recorded during 2023. 4 Texas districts notched the most book bans in America. Frisco ISD banned 368 books. Keller ISD banned 85 books. Conroe, right up the road, Independent School District banned 79, and Texarkana Independent School District banned 58 books. In Harris County, we support our librarians and the right to read. We will not allow closed-minded elected leaders to whitewash history to fit their political narrative. I'm proud that the Harris County Library is a source of banned books. Over 600 of the 800 so-called banned books are available to all Harris County residents. I want to repeat that again. I said over 600 of the 800 so-called banned books are available to the Harris County residents. That also makes the point that I'm not saying, nor are any of us speaking today, including the owner of this bookstore, saying no book should be banned. But when you have this onslaught of people trying to have a narrative that fits whatever their ideology may be, that not only bans books, it bans thought and discussion. I now want to invite up Representative Ron Reynolds. Last session in the Texas legislature in 2023, the legislature passed House Bill 900, which requires book vendors to rate all their materials based on their depictions or references to sex before selling them to schools. That all resulted in litigation. In January, the U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a decision that prohibits the Texas Education Agency from enforcing House Bill 900. And I want to bring Representative Reynolds up, who happens to be chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, to talk about the legislature's role in this fight. Representative Reynolds.
Thank you, Commissioner Ellis, Commissioner McCoy, Director Melton, and it certainly is great to be in your bookstore. I am Ron Reynolds, chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, proud to stand here today to really speak truth to power. When I think about one of the most powerful quotes, I remember a good friend of yours, Nelson Mandela. He said that education is the most powerful tool that we can use to change the world. Books are the foundation of education and a bastion for learning, libraries. And when we had House Bill 900, it was one of the darker days of the Texas legislature. We heard from countless teachers, librarians, educators about why House Bill 900 was wrong, because it was a form of censorship. And Commissioner Ellis, I have to be very truthful. It promoted whitewashing our history. They wanted to ban books that targeted specifically black and brown and marginalized communities, LGBTQIA communities. They wanted to ban books about Marcus Garvey, about slavery, about Jim Crow, about America's original sin of slavery. You combine this with Senate Bill 17, banning diversity, equity, and inclusion in our public colleges and universities. And just the previous session, we passed legislation that implemented this notion of critical race theory, where they couldn't teach these controversial things in public schools. So we've gone backwards. We've gone backwards in terms of our legislature. And unfortunately, it is very, very partisan. I've talked to many of my Republican colleagues who don't agree with this, but this is very far right extremists that support, some of them, books that they believe would make white and other people feel ashamed. That is the notion of critical race theory. So it is important that we have these books so that people learn about the history. The only way that you don't repeat bad parts of our history is if you learn from it.
United States of America, and certainly not in our communities. And that's why today I'm so proud to join Commissioner Ellis, to join Harris County, to say that here in our community, including in Fort Bend County, we will protect the freedom of expression and the ability of our communities to tell their stories. We know that public libraries and booksellers like Kindred Stories make all books, including banned books, available and accessible to our community, because they know that books can be the lifeline for the queer student who feels alone in their classroom but is able to see themselves in the stories that they read, because they know that books can be a source for that Native American who sees their story disappearing all too quickly, but they can find that story and their history in the books that they read. Because these institutions know that the allies who are looking to be allies but don't know where to get started can pick up a book and learn how to. Now, it's a tall order. I get that. But it's a tall order that these librarians and booksellers fill every day. And look, the facts tell us that 34% of librarians who have faced book bans have considered leaving the profession altogether. But what's encouraging is that 65% of them have chosen to fight censorship. And it's for booksellers and librarians like those who are in the good fight that we must too stand beside them and say, we are with you and we will fight alongside you. You know, I actually heard the story about Terry from a team member of mine who used to see her at markets all across the Houston area. Terry used to carry her books in crate by crate to these markets so that she could make them available, and she sold them under this 10 by 10 tent. At one point, my team member told me that she had done something to her foot and she was in a boot. But that did not deter her. She was determined to make sure that these books were available to this community, and look at where we are today in this incredible facility. She knew that people needed these books, and she knew that she had to, no matter what, make them available. And in Fort Bend County, the efforts to ban books, as Commissioner Ellis has said, has made its way out to our community. We see the move to ban books in our school district, but what I'm proud of is that in our county libraries, we maintain a proud commitment to making sure that books are available to our community. And so long as I have anything to do with it, we will continue to make sure that that's the case. And so the call is upon us today to make sure that everyone has a safe space in their neighborhood, like a Kindred Stories or a public library, with champions like Terry or Director Melton in their corner, so that they can truly read, learn, and be themselves. And this is the fight that starts right here, right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. You asked the question, why have a press conference today? Because this is National Banned Book Week, to put a focus on those books that have been banned. So when we did this press conference last year, my memory serves me correct, Terry slide up a little bit, we did it in front of that mural, which is in downtown Houston. And those are the artists who worked on it. And so when some people passed by that mural, we wanted something that would get the attention of young people. And initially when I saw the design, I said, that one does not quite get me. But now with time, I've really grown to appreciate it. And I think that one got probably the second largest number of hits, views of the 47 or so massive murals related to United Nations sustainability goals we put in downtown. I took a trip to go to New Orleans over the weekend. Sunday morning, I left about 5 a.m. And my wife and I were going to the funeral of the first Black First Lady of the city of New Orleans. It was her memorial service, Sybil Muriel. And we decided to drive because I wanted to stop by the Whitney Plantation outside New Orleans, which initially was the Hydale Plantation. And the initial name was of the slave owner who owned the site, the plantation. It was the site of one of the largest slave rebellions in the history of America. And the reason that Hydale's family has a connection to that plantation is that her great-great-grandfather came off that plantation. And he was the result of a relationship between the brother who owned the Hydale plantation and his mother. And he was able to purchase his freedom. This is my third visit to that plantation, but the first one for my wife. I went because during the pandemic, I did read a lot of books, including one called How the Word Passed, which has been banned in many places. And my daughter suggested that I read it, and I was so moved when I read it, I wanted to tour that plantation. So now imagine, first Black First Lady of New Orleans ended up coming off that very same plantation, which we're going to organize some tours for young people, Black, white, and brown, and of Iranian descent, to go and tour to know how far we have come in this country. My daughter also introduced me to this bookstore and brought me here along with her Great Dane one day. It is a dog-friendly environment, and I'm so proud of all my children, but my daughter, who's a reporter, so who can't come, suggested that I come and learn about your bookstore. So I'm very proud that we have leaders like Terry Ham, the owner of Kindred Spirits, and of course all of the other distinguished guests here. So we'll close out, go to questions after Terry Ham says whatever she'd like to say. The owner of this bookstore and her colleague.
This is Shanika Williams. She's such an important part of our store. So yes, I'm Terry Ham, the owner of Kindred Stories. We started this store back in 2021. As was mentioned, when I was doing pop-ups, I have a daughter who's a teenager, and I found that she wasn't really having enough access to books that she could see herself in, books that really express the variety of Black experiences. And we were living in Asia for a bit, and when we got back, I realized that we didn't have this space here in Houston. So I bravely started my pop-ups, not knowing what I was doing. I even sprained my ankle setting up for a pop-up, which set me back quite a bit. But yeah, spaces like Kindred Stories are so important. It's so important that we support our local bookstores, our libraries that are doing this work every single day to make these stories accessible to kids that are quite vulnerable. as we know, these book bans are really going crazy, and our kids are losing access to these stories that they can see themselves in their classrooms, in their libraries. We're seeing libraries being taken away. Access to books is really just having a hard time right now.
And so also one of the things that we do the most, that we're the most proud of, is taking authors to schools. And so with these banned book challenges, that causes an interference with kids having these very rich experiences with authors, with books, and getting access to it. So we try our best to make sure that banned books are available in our store for sale, that we make sure we amplify those voices, those Black, brown, marginalized people, to make sure we're doing our part.
Yeah, so we encourage you to continue supporting your local bookstores, your libraries. We've had the honor of working with many organizations, including the libraries in Houston, the ACLU of Texas, to really bring these really rich author experiences to students. And that's been a really beautiful way to fight these book bans. Our store also serves as a book sanctuary. We intentionally curate books around those experiences. And as Shanika mentioned, in addition to author talks at schools, we also host a lot of banned booked authors at our store. We've hosted Jason Reynolds, Tiffany Jackson, Nicole Hannah-Jones, Ibram X. Kendi, Jason Reynolds, Clint Smith, who you mentioned, who's the author of How the Word is Passed. And so our spaces have really become a beautiful way of fighting these book bans, and we really want to stick around for the long haul. So we encourage everyone to support your local bookstore and your libraries as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shanika. Shaniqua. Shanika? Shanika and Terry, thank you very much. We'll take any questions from our pool camera, and I know people are also watching online. We're glad to be. Thank you for hosting us. Hope we told you early, you know. Any questions? And if not, we'll be here afterwards if you want to. Okay, thank you all. All right.
Good job. Thank you.
Good job. Oh, these are books that have been